Thank you very much. Welcome to this important session on climate change, gender, security, and wash issues in West Africa. This session is part of the World Water Week, where we gather to discuss crucial topics that impact our global society. Today, we will focus on how climate change disproportionately affects women and girls in West Africa, particularly in terms of their access to water, sanitation, and hygiene services, and how we can empower them to tackle these challenges. Our session today will be structured around a series of insightful discussions. We will begin with a brief overview of the issues, followed by a panel discussion where we will delve deeper to understand the challenges and opportunities in this area. We will also have a Q&A session to engage your thoughts and your questions, and we'll wrap up by sharing some recommendations. For those of you who need language interpretation, please select language channel of your choice and ensure that you close your original microphone. If you encounter any issues, please feel free to reach out to our support team for assistance through the chat. So why this topic today? West Africa is one of the regions most vulnerable to climate change, which poses significant barrier to achieving our SDGs. Climate change worsens existing inequalities, particularly affecting women and girls who are already at disadvantage when it comes to access to wash. Today's discussion, we aim to better understand the specific impact of climate change on women and girls' wash needs, security, and overall well-being. And we are going to also explore how enhancing women's participation in climate adaptation strategies can help mitigate these impacts and improve outcomes for entire communities. Our goal is not only to raise awareness, but also to foster a commitment from stakeholders, including the private sector, to support women's roles in climate adaptation and mitigation efforts. I am pleased to introduce to you Dr. Lucien Damiba, our Regional Wash and Climate Change Advisor for WaterAid West Africa. Dr. Damiba will discuss the impact of climate change on security, health, and wash access, particularly for women and girls. And before he comes, let me also introduce myself. My name is Irabna Nyani Akofo, WaterAid Ghana Country Director. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Damiba, over to you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Climate change in West Africa is particularly important, having important impact. And among other factors observed in West Africa, where the rising temperature in the heat waves, rainfall is impacted with drought and flood, and decrease of number of rain days and reduce it wet seasons. And this affects natural resources, including water resources, wash, biodiversity, agriculture, human security, and the predictions notice that next 10 to 20 years in West Africa will face important variation on temperature and precipitations. And in terms of why women and girls are more vulnerable in West Africa, as some figures, statistics can let us know how it's important that importantly affected. We have 70% of 1.3 billion people living in poverty are women, and poorest households are added by 40 40% of women in urban areas. 60 to 80% of food production is carried out by women, and women hold less than 10% of the land in West Africa. In terms of water and firewood collections, 80% of these are going to girls and women in West Africa. So, having said that, as what climate change affects livelihood and others, you can see that women are most vulnerable to climate change. In terms of child exposures, we have noticed that 2.3 billion children face different stresses in water. And in terms of summary, you can say that natural disasters affect mostly women and girls in West Africa. And the number of deaths by natural disasters caused by climate change is 14 times higher among women and children. Drought affects women and girls disproportionately in developing countries like Burkina Faso, Ghana, Nigeria, and so on and so forth. And women, 72% of women and 99% of girls spend more than 40% of their caloric intake to carry water for us all use. So let me drop here and let you know that in West Africa, having these statistics, you can see easily how climate change affects women and girls in West Africa. So I'll just land here and let my colleagues take you into practices, example we are carrying out in West Africa. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Lucien, for sharing that. Those are indeed very concerning statistics. And moving on to our panel, I am very pleased to introduce our honorable or brave panelists who are joining us today to share their experience from the field and also the work that they have been doing. And to start with, my first panel will be Amanda Smith. Amanda is the head of community impact at Diageo. Diageo is a global leader in beverage alcohol. She leads the global strategy for community impact, as well as a global human rights governor. She has 15 years experience working for leading global organizations and is passionate about creating value for business and society. Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us. And our second panel is Agnes Loriba. She is the program team lead for the Right to Food, Water and Nutrition and Climate Justice program at Care Ghana. Agnes is a development expert with over 16 years of extensive hands-on work experience, including 12 years in senior program leadership expertise, and also working in the advocacy, rights, and voice subsector covering governance, and also issues around environmental sustainability, climate resilience, social and economic empowerment of women and youth. Thank you so much, Agnes, for joining us. And finally, but not the least, we have Felix Bevvilla. Felix is a motivated development management professional with more than 22 years of experience working across various projects that is ranging from education, health, and WASH, and leading the coordination of intervention among partners in Ghana and West Africa. So we have this amazing panel members, and we will be talking to them on the topic for today. So thank you so much, panel, for joining us this morning, and we will delve straight into our conversation so that we can have some good time for Q&A where the audience can also engage you. So my first question will be going to care, and then water aid. So how do women experience the impact of climate change on a daily basis from the work that you do, from the interactions that you have with communities every day? And what are the challenges, particularly on security, that they face due to climate change?
Okay, yes. So I would like to kick off this discussion with experience from Ken. I think the first speaker, Lucien, provided a lot of context and background and statistics related to how climate change disproportionately affects women. And so I will speak more about what I see daily, both in my work, but also as somebody who lives in northern Ghana, part of Sahel, the Sahel region in West Africa, and also considered a climate hotspot. I would say the way women experience the effects of climate change is strongly informed by the context, how the social norms, institutions are structured, and how these affect women's access to information, access to resources, and how they are able to respond to the effect of climate change. And as already mentioned, due to their limited access to resources, information, how our patriarchal systems are, they are the most affected. I would say living here in northern Ghana, on a day-to-day basis, you would find, for instance, young girls from the north, both young and middle-aged women from the north, having to travel down south, mainly due to how the effects of climate change have affected both livelihoods of their households, but also for them as women who have a responsibility to cater for their children and contribute to the upkeep of their families. And so delving very specifically to security, I would say that, so for example, when these young women have to migrate down south, the social support systems they have here left behind. Most of them have to live mostly in shelter that doesn't offer protection, exposure to gender-based violence. In the Sahel region, we see a lot of displacements. Now here in northern Ghana, we find a lot more women and children having to move from Niger, from Mali, due to conflicts, but we know that a lot of these conflicts are driven by the increased competition for resources, especially natural resources, due to the effects of climate change. So we know that 80% of people who are displaced as a result of insecurity, conflict due to resources engineered by effects of climate change are women. And the exposure that comes with violence, gender-based violence, when they have to relocate to unsafe locations of shelter, to locations that do not offer adequate protection, both for women, for young girls, and for children. In Lucian's earlier presentation, he spoke about the role that women and girls have to play with collecting wood, fuel wood, and water. And with climate change, it becomes increasingly difficult for women to collect this. They have to travel longer distance to locations that expose them to insecurities. And then my last point would even focus more at the household level, where there's evidence that when there's increased limitations to income, to food security at the household level, there's more gender-based violence, domestic violence that women experience. In Nigeria, we conducted a study, carried out a study to understand the interconnectedness between climate change, gender, and domestic violence. This study proved that there's increased domestic violence that women experience due to the effects of climate change and how these play out at the household level. So I'll leave it here for my colleague from WaterAid to add on.
Thank you so much, Agnes. Felix, let's hear from you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think a lot has been said about the background we have established already. I'll pick it up from where my colleague left off. Discussing on the impacts that climate change have on women. If we would take the health of women, maternal and child health is affected as a result of the impact of climate change. The rising temperatures leads to the spread of diseases. And we know that women are the caretakers. They take care of the sick in the household. So with increasing diseases such as malaria, also rising temperatures, women spend a lot more time of their time taking care of the sick at home. This affects their economic potential, the time to engage in other livelihood activities so as to raise income for family. With climate, the food distribution of supply is heavily affected. That women are the one who are into childbearing, and nutrition is very important for childbearing. So with climate change, there's food insecurity. Food insecurity, the nutrition is affected. Nutrition of the family is affected, and when that happens, women sometimes have to sacrifice because they are taking care of the family, of the children. And so their nutrition is affected, and not only them, but the children. But if the woman has, if she's already pregnant, the development of the child is affected by the nutrition of the mother. So these are other ways by which women are affected by impacts of climate change. Yeah, if you take access to
Hello, Felix. Okay, I think that we may have lost Felix at this time. But thank you so much, Felix and Agnes. You share some very interesting insights into how women, children, and even newborns, including pregnant women, are affected by climate change. I want to move on to ask you, Agnes, whilst we wait for Felix to join us. What do you find to be the added value of women participation in WASH programming or interventions that seek to improve adaptation of communities to climate change around WASH?
Okay, yeah. So so just let you know, I've taken off my video because of the bandwidth.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I think as already highlighted, we all agree that climate change exacerbates existing inequalities, gender being key to this, and also overall contributing to poverty, inequality across the globe. So across all our programs, we strongly integrate gender equality, and our theory of change, programming theory of change, is directly underpinned on addressing issues of inequality, improving gender equality. So informed by this, our vision, programming vision for 2030 is ensuring that as an organization, we work with 25 million poor and marginalized people, particularly women and girls, because we all agree that they are the most disproportionately affected, strengthening their resilience and adaptive capacity to the effects of climate change. And like I said, we do this in an integrated approach. So we just don't focus on working with women, addressing issues of inequality in gender-focused projects. So we do integrate across all our programming. So for instance, in the last financial year, 59% of the people we reached through our programs in the climate justice programming portfolio were women. This was an increase from 57% in the previous year. So this speaks to the fact that we are increasingly strengthening our programming around how we reach women, young girls, empower them, but also improve gender equality across board. So why we do this and why we think it's important to do this, especially for including women and girls, is the fact that they are the most disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change. And they need to be part of the solution because they are able to bring on board how they experience the effects and specifically highlighting their needs, but also they come in with strong knowledge and understanding of the context and of solutions that can be scaled to address the challenges that are encountered as a result of climate change. So in addition to including women in programming, it's also ensuring that they are much more involved, even in decision-making, in the solutions at the community level and at the household level. We know that when women are involved in decision-making, it ensures that the solutions reflect the needs of everyone in the household, even including the men and children. And I'll just conclude by adding that in our work on addressing these gender issues and including women, we go beyond including women because we do understand that there's value in engaging men and boys. So a key part of our approach to engaging women is also ensuring that we are engaging men and boys, we are engaging community leaders, we are working on addressing social norms and the structural barriers that reflect in how women are able to access information, access resources, but also opportunities to enable them adapt and mitigate the effects of climate change. Over.
Thank you very much, Agnes. And Felix, welcome back. If you could conclude your point and then also, in addition, share with us the added value that you also see in your programming that you do at WaterAid Ghana when it comes to participation of women in programs or projects. Hello, Felix, do we have you back? Okay, all right. So Thank you very much, Agnes. We will still be following up with Felix so that he gets through with the difficulties that he's having. So great insights from you, Agnes, around the
Okay, I am back.
All right, Felix. Thank you very much. So what I was asking, if you could, in the next 2 minutes, conclude your previous point around your experiences on women and the impact of climate change on their daily livelihood, and then also share with us the added value of integrating their participation in projects.
Okay, so I was just presenting this scenario of a woman living in northern Ghana in particular. Her daily lives involves walking several kilometers to collect water, a task that has become more arduous because of the lack of resources. The water sources are drying up, and yet she has to walk several kilometers in search of water, which is not even safe in the first place. And this takes significant amount of her time and energy. And this exposes her to a lot of risks as she goes about from place to place looking for water. And with climate change, crop yields are dwindling, harvests are bad, so there's food insecurity. And with food insecurity comes poor nutrition and hunger. And in addition to this, she has to fend for the family. So her own nutrition is affected. And in spite of all this, when it comes to this community decision making, with regard to adaptation strategies and water resource management, women have little to say. They are on the background, they have little to say, and it's the men who take the decisions about the very things that affect them the most. Okay, so moving on to the value addition, I'll just add to what my colleague said. We know that women play a great role in knowledge transfer from one generation to the other. So when women are participating in designing climate change adaptation strategies, likelihood is that they will pass on the knowledge, the practices, and the knowledge to the generation. So there's generational impact. The generational impact where women are participating in climate change adaptation strategies, designing, and decision making.
Thank you very much, Felix. Certainly, there is no doubt that active involvement of women and girls lead to better outcomes, particularly in health, wash, education, economic development. I would like to move to our colleague from Diageo, Amanda, and with all of these understanding and context in terms of the challenge and then also the benefits of involving women in our programming. From your corporate sustainability strategy, why is it important for you to include gender focus in your WASH programming? And what has been some of the impact of your work, and then what are some of the challenges that you can also share with us?
Sure. And hello, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join the call today. So the first thing to say here is that for Diageo, in the decade to 2020, we already had a really long-standing commitment to providing water sanitation and hygiene to our communities in water-stressed areas, as well as a commitment to championing inclusion and diversity, not just with our employee base, but also out through our suppliers and communities as well. So we already had some foundations on which to build. As we wrote our strategy towards 2030, along with the rest of the world, we were increasingly seeing the linkages between environmental and social issues, and seeing that really to deliver our best work and to have the greatest impact, we now needed to start connecting those commitments between WASH and I&D and move away from siloed approaches where we had separate women's empowerment programs in one part of the world and then water, sanitation and hygiene programs in another part of the world. We wanted to apply an inclusion lens, what we call inclusive by design, on all of our community programs, including WASH. And by doing this, we saw an opportunity not just to have a better impact in terms of the investment we've made as a business, delivering multiple outcomes within one program, but more importantly, an opportunity for the communities impacted to receive multiple benefits from the programs and the investments that we were making. So that's why we really saw that moving forward, we wanted to take a new and integrated approach. But we are an alcohol producer. We are not an NGO expert, which is where we lean into our partners like WaterAid, like Care International. And we approach them to say, what could this look like in real terms, in program design for our water, sanitation and hygiene programs? And how can you help us to do that in a way which is sensitive and responsible and does no harm, considering that the social and cultural norms around gender are quite complex? So WaterAid at the time, and you can find this online, were already working in partnership with many organizations to create a step-by-step guide of how to make your WASH programs inclusive by design. And I really recommend anybody on this call having a look at that. Often on these panels, you hear the theory and you nod along, but when it comes to the practice, you kind of stall and you don't know where to start or you feel a bit intimidated. And then with Care International, we looked at that comprehensive guide, but instead of trying to do everything all at once, we said, what are the two things we can do to begin on this journey? Because I think sometimes perfection is the enemy of progress here. And if we don't even start small, we won't start at all, particularly when we're dealing with more complicated topics. So what we said was, because Diageo already had a target for Society 2030 that 50% of our community program beneficiaries were women, in the context of WASH, we said that we wanted all of our WASH committees to be 50% women, so that women had a choice and a voice in the design of the programs from the beginning, recognizing that they are disproportionately impacted by a lack of access to WASH, but they also were an absolute font of knowledge of the most effective and sustainable program design, because they were the ones interacting with the water on a daily basis. But, and this is where Care are an excellent partner to us, we knew we couldn't do that as a blunt instrument. And if we just walked into our communities and said, from now on, 50% women, please, there was a real chance of backlash, a chance of harm. And we took that responsibility very seriously. So Care have a fantastic tool where they go into communities and they do a gender power analysis first, and they understand the social and cultural norms that exist. And then they put in place tools, activities, and conversations which can begin to dismantle some of those harmful social and cultural norms that prevent women's equal access to and agency over WASH. And we started small. We just did one pilot in Kenya with a community that we'd already built a relationship with, and we took baby steps, and we had really positive results, doing the 50% women on the WASH committee, holding those community dialogues. And by the end of it, we saw that 91% of women felt they had more decision-making power as a result, and men much more accepting of women's views. And based on that, now all of our WASH programs across 9 countries in Africa, India, and Latin America apply this, and we track it as a KPI, so that every time we invest in WASH, we are also empowering women. That win-win. Now,
Fantastic.
I was just going to come to your challenges, which I think you're probably most interested in. Shall I do that?
Yes, please. If we can do that in 1 minute.
Yes, I can. So I think it's important on these panels that people discuss the challenges. I think when companies in particular come to these panels and present a sort of shiny finished product, in one way it's inspiring, but in another way it can actually just feel intimidating and unhelpful, and you might not feel that your organization in your location and size can tackle something like this. So I wanted to talk about some of the challenges that we saw and how we overcame them, so that hopefully you can avoid those pitfalls, but also it gives you the confidence to just test and learn. So the first thing, which I've said already, is just about making sure that you just take one small step. Don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. The second challenge is that you absolutely have to invest time upfront, engaging the community, particularly men and boys, particularly community leaders, and doing this gender power analysis so that you do no harm in your approach. So the challenge is the risk of harm, and the answer to that is this gender power analysis and the community dialogue. The third challenge then is, how do you do that consistently so that you've got some quality control, whether Care is delivering this for us or WaterAid is delivering this for us, another local NGO partner. And that's where Care and WaterAid have been so wonderful in sharing their toolkits so that we can replicate the approach in a consistent way. And then the final thing I just wanted to call out as a challenge, which is a challenge for us all, is budgets. We are in a world of ever finite resources, and adding a gender lens onto an existing WASH program might present you with some challenges in terms of budgets. But I think the way to hold that tension within the organization is we have a target which holds my organization to account that we have to deliver, and therefore we have to put this in our programming, and therefore we have to resource it. And also you can pitch it to your business that ultimately you're not getting two for the price of one, but you're delivering multiple impacts within one program, which is a better return on investment. So yes, I wanted to put that out there to help people secure the budget that they needed to add this to their programs.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And yes, budgets. Budget remains key. And just picking up on that comment on budget and the conversation that has been happening in recent times about really pushing for stronger political leadership, political commitment at both the national and then the local level. I would like to go back to Care and WaterAid. This time around, I'll start with Felix. What recommendations could we be looking at in terms of pushing for better political commitment around addressing WASH and climate issues? Because as we know, it has to be a collective action and everybody has to be on board. So I'll start with Felix, and then we move to Agnes in 1 minute.
Okay, so there are several recommendations, but in 1 minute, I would say that we need to encourage data collection on the impact of climate change on women, gender segregated data on the impact of climate change. So that data will better inform us as to the effect of the impact of climate change on women and girls. Then we need to ensure that women play a role in climate change decision-making, climate change decision-making, both at the national and the community levels, so that their views and voice is better represented. Yeah. So,
thank you. Sorry, please, Felix, please finish.
Yes. So we also need to ensure that we increase women representation in top-level decision making at the national, the district, and the regional levels, and international levels. And also, as part of the recommendation, we need to engage men. The men must not be left out. We need to engage them as allies to the addressing the impact of climate change on women. So it needs to be holistic, and we ensure that we plan and budget for climate actions that have impact on women. There should be a national plan which is broken down to the community level, addressing gender inequality. It should be planned and budgeted for.
Thank you very much, Felix. And I will quickly move to Agnes to share some of her recommendations to drive political leaders' commitment.
Okay, yeah. So my first recommendation, I think Felix has spoken about that already. So the bit I want to add to that is so on inclusive planning for climate response is that there's evidence of a value for money in ensuring that we plan in an inclusive manner that involves women, girls, men, scientists. Yeah, so for every $1 invested in such inclusive planning processes on how we respond to climate change, there's a $4 return on investment. And so just appealing to policy makers, to decision makers that there's value and there's scientific proof of the value in doing this. My second recommendation is the need for us, for policymakers, to invest in understanding the differential experiences of women and men, with a focus on achieving equity when we are planning and implementing climate response initiatives. And yes, I think Amanda spoke to this earlier about the importance of analysis and how we have embedded this in the way we run our initiatives in care. So informed by strong analysis of the differential effects and opportunities for people of different gender, age. Use this analysis to inform the design, but also in our activities, reflect on how we are addressing the gender issues we identified in the analysis, and also in monitoring, how are we monitoring both the gender equality outcomes, but also other results of these initiatives. My last recommendation is about the importance of integrating gender-based violence prevention and response in our climate justice programming across board, and this goes to policy and decision makers. This will be an important step in ensuring that climate programs and policies are gender responsive and also address the needs of the people who are most disproportionately affected. Over.
Thank you very much, Agnes. And I know that, Amanda, you did touch slightly in terms of how corporate can make commitments and how you are motivated by your KPI. Are there any other recommendations that you would like to add in terms of increasing commitment from private sector to ensure that climate change impacts are addressed with a gender lens?
Yes, I think in the last 10 years, boardrooms have an increasing understanding now of ESG overall and its importance to sustainable business growth. I think the next step that businesses need to go on is understanding the links between environmental and social issues instead of treating them in silos on strategy slides. And for example, climate and gender is one of those. I think it's important that in a world of finite resources and economic pressure, that you put that recommendation to the board as an opportunity rather than an additional complexity or something extra that you have to do. Because from their perspective, it's a better return on investment for their ESG investments to get both a social and environmental benefit. And that's not only better for the business, that's better for the communities at the same time. And I think that will be a real unlock for businesses moving forward. And that's what I'd like to see more of from businesses in the future.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you so much, Agnes and Felix. You will still be with us. We are now opening up for questions and additions from our members and our colleagues that are online participating. So please you can put your questions in the chat box, or please do feel free to open your mic and then do share your question. Let me also check the chat box for any. Please, if you have a question, do not So I do have one private question that has come to me on budget. How do we get the government, local government, to make more allocations for climate resilient wash? That will go to Agnes and Felix. Any thoughts on that?
So I would say that to make local government, particular, make allocation for gender initiatives in addressing climate change impact on women, I think we need to begin with data collection. We should encourage or advocate for the collection of data, the impact on the impact of climate change on women and men, so that we can demonstrate to what extent climate change disproportionately affect women. In that case, when that happens, they will find a motivation to invest more, to allocate more resources to address addressing the imbalance and the impact of climate change on women. So data collection is one key thing that we need to do to get local authorities to allocate resources to address climate change.
Thank you very much. Anything from you, Agnes? I do have another private question on the role of men, on the role of husbands, on the role of men leaders in communities in supporting women participation in programming. And also, okay, maybe you should take that one first before I move to the final one.
Okay, yeah, so which should I take? Is it the role of men, or I should begin by adding on to the question about budget?
Yes, if you have any additions on budget in 30 seconds, and then you can also talk about the role of men.
Okay, yeah. So on the budgets, just to add to what Felix has shared about data and analysis, is also about the importance of planning and community-led planning, and working with these district assemblies to be able to reach and work with these communities on action plans that reflect the needs at the community level, because we do understand that whatever is planned and budgeted for at the district level should be informed by the planning process. And so at CARE, we do invest in working with these district assemblies to reach out to these communities and use participatory processes that enable them generate plans that inform the budgets, and also build capacity of these communities to be able to follow up with the assemblies on implementation of the plans.
Agnes, I want to twist that one a bit and turn it around. So we've had situations where the proactiveness of the local government to engage their communities has been poor or non-existent at all. How can the women groups be empowered to be more proactive when it comes to engaging their local government and municipalities in a consistent manner, not just during projects, but then beyond projects?
Okay, yeah, so we have done this by supporting in building the systems and structures at the community level. So working with community groups, supporting women's groups, women's associations, want to even understand how these assemblies are structured and how they can engage with the assemblies. And I think with experience, what works mostly building such networks on existing community groups. Most often when you start a group or some civil society engagement thing, just purely based on a project, once the project closes, then the level of activity also fizzles out. So building on existing women's networks, for instance, community development committees, the VSLAs have also proven to be like a self-sustaining network that includes a lot of women. And then, so in our experience, we have found that supporting and capacitating such groups to be able to engage has been effective.
Thank you very much. And I have another private question.
But I didn't respond to the issue of men and boys.
Yes, men and boys. Thank you very much. We do, please, if you could do that in under 1 minute so that the final.
Okay. Yeah, so engaging men and boys in care, we do have a strategy and approach for doing that. And we do understand, these are the power holders, key decision makers, but also, especially for boys, that once we are able to work on transformation with boys, then they grow with it. So we engage men and boys at 3 levels. One as participants of our programs, as actors, so really play an influential role both in the community and also influence other men. So we have men, male champions, and we do work with men also as allies, especially the influential leaders, ensuring that they are able to rally and influence members of their communities and even beyond in support of transforming the norms that affect the way both women, young girls, and men are able to access and use resources.
Thank you so much. And a final question, and Felix is also related to programming, is the concern that most of our programming have always focused on women participation, and sometimes the way we are engaging women is having negative impact on them. And so how do we ensure that the engagement and the participation of women in our program doesn't give them more work, but then actually enhances their lifestyle and their well-being? And this could be answered by Agnes or Felix, but I'll start from Felix.
So this is true. If care is not taken, we are deepening the gender inequalities and thereby giving women more work. And so our approach is to engage them holistically, engage men, both men and women, to the extent that men will appreciate the extent of which women are we appreciate the existing inequalities and the impact of the impact of that on them as men, because the inequalities affect men positively. And so if they understand that, then you will be moving towards bridging the gap, so that women are not burdened more by initiatives to empower them. For example, if you take the VSLA, there is a sanitation component in water aid strategy to take part of the benefits to construct household are trained. And we know that women most of the time constitute the VSLA. And so we are deliberately, intentionally involving men, women and their spouses in these VSLA groups, so that the contribution will be more or less equal, so that they will both contribute. And so we need to be intentional about it. We need to be intentional about it, plan around it.
And it is all in being intentional in our effort. And here are some of the policy recommendations from our policy brief on gender, climate change, and WASH. And it certainly aligns with the conversations that we've been having here today. To quickly wrap up this session, key that has come out is the involve women and vulnerable population in the adaptation process, in the policy making, and in the action planning. The voices and participation of women brings their knowledge and experience when it comes to the stewardship of water resources and WASH services. Empowering women economically, socially, and politically is also an excellent way to ensure sustainability. And finally, strengthen partnership, collaboration, and support across countries, across corporates, across governments, across corporate, to ensure that we are meeting the challenges posed in a collective way. I want to say a very big thank you to our panel, Amanda, Agnes, and Felix. Thank you for sharing your insights and your expertise today. It has certainly built our understanding, and also created and also highlighted the challenges and the opportunities that exist as we work towards 2030. I want to say thank you again. And then finally, some key messages that we have been receiving on social media is: one, women are not just the victims of global warming, they are also solution providers we have to rely on. And just to pick the last one, gender sensitive investment in adaptation and mitigation programs, technology transfers, and capacity building should be encouraged. And with just 1 minute to go, I want to say a very big thank you for making the time to join us here. I want to thank you for your active participation. I want to thank you to our panel for their valuable insights. And today's conversation has highlighted the critical importance of addressing the intersection between climate change, gender security, and WASH in West Africa. And we have seen how empowering women is not only essential for gender equity, but it's also important for building resilient communities that can effectively respond to climate challenges, even beyond generations, generations after generations. I want to say thank you so much to the team that has been supporting me in the background and making sure that all the technical part of this has gone smoothly. Thank you once again. My name is Irabna Akofo, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the event. Bye.